Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your fearful, unassimilated Captain Christopher Ingle, joined by my first officer, who is wise enough not to question my decisions, Commander Brennan, the mystical Mar. Brennan, how we doing?
Homie Ishmael.
All right, Ishmael. Have we legally gotten that through the Federation yet?
Apparently.
Well, today we are taking a look at what is argued as possibly the best of the Next Generation films, if not easily. Top 3 Star Trek films of all time. Star Trek First Contact. I love this one, Brennan. I know you do. And we had to bring in somebody else, as is tradition with the movies. So we thought to bring in a good friend of the show. She's a big fan of Star Trek. She's got lots of opinions, and we like people with opinions. Please welcome Kelly Wang. Kelly, how we doing?
Hi, guys. We're doing well. I have opinions. Is that how you introduce me? I have opinions.
Doman had opinions.
Oh, there's many opinions.
Scott Mance has opinions. We're okay with this.
I just watched your Scott Mance episode.
Yes. So Kelly, you gave us a little brief kind of thing, but where's your love of Star Trek come from?
So I believe what I said was, so I'm a new generation girl. So I actually just watched your Scott Mance episode. So I was aware of Star Trek growing up and I live in San Francisco. So when Star Trek 4 came out, The Voyage Home, that's filmed here.
There it
that
is.
That was 86 when that movie came out.
86.
So I was very aware of Star Trek. I was one of those who knows I watch both Star Wars and Star Trek. You can do both. And I was definitely very aware of the movies, but I didn't watch a lot of the TV shows. They were in syndication. They were on TV, but I just didn't really watch them until one Saturday night when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I turned on the TV and there is a very British sounding person in a Star Trek uniform on my TV, along with other people that I kind of recognized. I recognized LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow. So I was like, oh, hey, I know who that is.
Yep.
And I started watching. I was like, what is this? I didn't know what it was. And I found out that it was a sequel to Star Trek called Star Trek The Next Generation. And then every Saturday night from then on for 7 years, even while I was in college. And it was difficult because I didn't have a TV there. So, and that's how my Star Trek love. And I was one of those, I was the perfect demographic. People can say all they want about Wesley Crusher, but he was there to get my demographic to watch Star Trek, and it worked. I was a perfect demographic to watch. Oh, like, hey, this is somebody I recognize, and watch him on the show.
Very nice.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm not going to waste any time. First Contact is something that I know we all enjoy. How did you feel walking back into First Contact, Kelly?
So I rewatched this last night. And I watched it with my husband, who you guys both know is probably a bigger Star Trek fan than I am, because he's corrected some of your questions, Chris. And what we thought was interesting was that this was clearly a movie made for people who watch the show. Because if you didn't watch the show, you had no idea who the Borg was. In the many years I've seen either the show or the movies, and I was watching and I was like, when did they have a war with the Borg? I don't remember any of this. I had not watched DS9 at the time I saw the movie when it came out in theaters. And I not watched DS9 when I seen the movie. I was like, why is Worf in this other looking ship? So I was very confused, and people just kind of fill me in afterwards. But it was, you're right, it is the best of the Next Generation films. It is the movie that is actually a movie. People have complained some of the other movies were just longer episodes, which they kind of were. But this was the one that was a movie. It took a plot line that was introduced only a couple of times in the series and made a movie out of it. Kind of like what they did with Wrath of Khan, kind of like what they did with some of the other original series movies. And made a full-fledged movie out of it with special effects, very groundbreaking at the time, and with a contained story where the only complaint is that if you weren't at all familiar with the universe, you kind of wouldn't know what's going on. Who are these Borg people? What is happening? How do they travel back in time? So, but other than that, it is a self-contained movie where if you lifted it out of the Star Trek universe, it could still be a self-contained science fiction movie by itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with you. This is one of those Star Trek movies that definitely anyone could watch. It's got a little bit of everything. It's awesome. But yet within the universe, and we'll talk about this starts something down the line that we didn't realize. And I absolutely love that. Brennan, how about you about going back into this?
I mean, this is probably my third favorite Star Trek film. I love this movie. Going back to it was a lot of fun. It had been maybe 2 or 3 years since I watched it. Still holds up. Um, and really, as Kelly said, this is a cinematic presentation. This feels big, like a movie. By the way, I must say the visual effects, for being 27 years old, still look pretty good, I would say. And there's a lot of also practicality as well as CGI and stuff. The whole idea of going back in time and exploring what was Earth like before the Federation, but after World War III, in that time period that the Star Trek Enterprise started to cover a little bit. It's fascinating to me, but also the fact that it is piggybacking off what was in the show. This is sort of the completion of almost like a 4-episode arc with Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2, Family, which is the episode that came out right after, and this film. And this kind of closes the cycle of trauma that Picard is dealing with, which is really interesting to see Picard in a, Picard is always the ethical guy.
Mhm.
This is definitely what PTSD has done to him.
Mhm.
And so seeing this movie again, the great action, great humor, great visuals, great looking new Enterprise. I mean, I just love this movie, and every time I watch it, I just get such joy. But honestly, I'm moved to tears by it in multiple scenes because of just the joy I get out of this movie.
Mhm. All right. Well, with that, why don't we go ahead and just kind of quickly review what happens in this film? So we open up with Jean-Luc Picard having a nightmare within a nightmare, very
Mhm.
Inception-like, of his time with the Borg. When he finally wakes up, he actually wakes up to a phone call, basically a communication from Admiral Hansen. Won't be the last time we see Admiral Hansen either, even though you'd think that it is
Admiral
not the last
Hayes.
time. Oh, Hayes.
Admiral
I said
Hayes.
Hansen. Yeah, there's another
Hansen's the other one.
Hansen's the other one. Yeah. Hayes. Thank you. Admiral Hayes.
Mhm.
Anyway, and he beats Admiral Hayes to the punch and says, I know the Borg are here. The Enterprise is ordered to not engage the Borg and to patrol the neutral zone, while the other ships in the sector are going to meet and basically intercept this Borg vessel and stop it.
At Earth.
At Earth, yeah. Actually, it's funny, they don't mention going to Earth, but that's one of the weird things is time and distance in this,
Sector
and
001.
I'm a little confused by it, but okay, we'll go on. Anyway, so they engage, the ships do meet and they engage the Borg, and they're getting their tails handed to them pretty quickly. Picard makes a call after getting really frustrated being left behind to go ahead and break orders and meet them there anyway and take command, because he's the one man who could have an insight enough to defeat them. And so he goes to the battle, where we also find out that Lieutenant Commander Worf is commanding the Defiant,
which is piloted by Adam Scott.
It is Adam Scott.
Yeah.
Yes. But as they get there, the Enterprise saves the Defiant. Picard takes control, and they all manage to destroy the cube. But a Borg sphere escapes just in the nick of time and goes towards Earth. the sphere creates a chronoton field, basically, that they use to go back in time. The Enterprise follows them into the wake of this, and as they're going through the wake, they discover that the Borg successfully made it back and assimilated Earth. But luckily, the Enterprise is protected by traveling through time. When they get all the way back to where they realize that they are in the year 2063 in April, the day before first contact, the historic flight of Zephram Cochrane and the Phoenix. And they see the Borg firing on that complex to stop first contact. Picard and the Enterprise do destroy the sphere, and then go down to check on Bozeman, Montana, and see what's going on and can they help in any way. So most of the main crew, they beam down, and they discover they can't find Cochrane right away, but they discover they need to do repairs on the ship because they know how important it is to go off. And we meet Lily. Lily is Zephram Cochrane's right-hand girl, and she attacks them, but due to radiation exposure and being shocked a little bit by Data, she passes out. Crusher wants to go ahead and she knows she's a healer, so she takes her and Lily back to the Enterprise to do Crusher things on her. Meanwhile, however, the Enterprise is experiencing a little difficulties. Some technical things in engineering and Deck 16. Picard begins to hear something in his head, and he calls back to the ship and finds out through his own deduction that the Borg survived. He beams back to the ship with Data, leaving Riker, Troy, and Geordi down below to do repairs. They beam back up, and he goes to engineering with Mr. Worf, and discovers that the ship is being assimilated by the Borg from the inside out. Data, luckily, very smartly, locks out the computer with an encryption code that the Borg can't break. But unfortunately, as they go in, Data is captured by the Borg, and everyone else escapes. And so we now have two different stories: what's going on in the Enterprise, what's going on down below. On the Enterprise, we have Picard trying to break through, trying to get through, but everyone's failing. The Borg are just beating him at every pass, but they stop only so far on the ship, and they don't continue assimilating. And he's trying to figure out what is going on. As he escaped from one of the raids and trying to get an engineering, he meets up with Lily, who they had to escape from sickbay. Meets up with Lily, who, they get separated, and so they've got to make their way through the ship. We'll go into details about their little adventure there, but they do eventually manage to make it up to the bridge and discover that the dish, the deflector dish, is being converted into a beacon to summon the Borg of that time to come and assimilate Earth, and they have to stop it. So we get a great sequence of Lieutenant Hawk, played by a young Neil McDonough, as well as Picard and Worf in Zero G, trying to stop the Borg on the outside of the ship. It's
a really cool sequence,
which they do succeed, and unfortunately this has to change the Borg's plans. Now we have the introduction, this is the first time we've seen this, of a Borg queen. We always believed that the Borg were a hive mind. It was one unit for all. Everybody was connected. Yet we meet the Borg queen, who we've never really fully understood what she is throughout the years. But she is I guess we'll call it the de facto leader of the Borg, to put it in simple terms.
Yeah.
And she is trying to convince Data to join her. And she is manipulating Data by giving him everything he's ever wanted, including human skin, fuller access to his emotions, which he shut off his chip and everything. And she's trying to tempt him in order for him to give them the codes for the ship, which it looks like actually she succeeds in. Eventually, Picard is convinced by Lily, and again, we'll go over this scene, that they need to blow up the ship. It's the only way to defeat the Borg and end this and to save mankind. And so they set the ship to blow, but Picard hears Data's voice in his head. and he decides that I'm going to go rescue Data. And so we have one final encounter between the Borg and Captain Picard. And there's a great fight scene on engineering where Picard ends up winning the day and defeating the Borg Queen and the Borg. Meanwhile, on the planet, they manage to fix the Phoenix, get it off and going, and they go to warp, which is great. They go to warp. The test flight is great. And then at the end of the film, we finally see what we've heard for so many years. First contact with the Vulcans landing on the planet after detecting the warp signature and meeting humans, truly meeting humans face to face for the first time. And the film ends with them heading back and everything being fixed and everything's okay. Or is it? But we'll get into
We'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Let's start with our guest, Kelly. What do you like about this film?
So what I like about this film is what I mentioned earlier, that they took a storyline that you guys mentioned there. So when did we meet the Borg? Was it season 3 or season 2?
Q-Who in season 2.
At the end of season 2.
So it was season 2, beginning season
Although
3.
it's a weird thing, the Borg we did not see them, but the idea of the Borg was already planted at the end of season 1.
That's true. That's true.
So it was something they planned on working, but it shifted. The first time we saw the Borg, though, officially in canon, was Q-Who.
And that's when we saw the cube, correct?
Yes.
So that was season 2. And after the Locutus storyline, we never really saw the cube again. We saw Hugh, we saw Lord we know the concept of Borg. If you're a new Trek fan right now, all you know about Next Generation is Borg. That is the biggest villain, that is the big baddie, that's the big baddie throughout the universe, right? They do it in Picard, they sprinkle Borg everywhere. If you watch Voyager, Borg is everywhere because they're in the Delta Quadrant. But at this point in time, that hasn't happened yet. At this point in time, when this movie comes out, it's 96. Last you saw the cube was season 2 or 3 of the series. You may have seen it in Voyager. I don't remember the exact timeline, but you're not really aware of them.
Voyager, not yet. Voyager, we don't
true.
Get the introduction of the Borg, I believe, until season 3. And that was end of 1996, right? Beginning of 97.
It was Scorpion, I believe.
Actually, even before that, there were things before that, but yes, they culminates with Scorpion.
Oh, that's right. They found it in Blood Fever.
They did, and then they met that that group that wanted to be reassimilated to stop fighting with each other and create a collective. And anyway, so yeah, the Borg were featured periodically during that 3rd season, but that was after First Contact.
In Voyager.
Yeah. It's all after First Contact.
Right. So this is the first introduction of the Queen. This is the first introduction to everything. So they did what Star Trek always does. They take an existing character, they kind of change it around a little bit, and then make another big story out of it, right? So in the Borg, as you said, we were aware that it was a collective. It was almost supposed to be basically an egalitarian collective with no heading, no leader. Well, for a movie, that doesn't make any sense and it's boring. And you can't make a movie out of that. You have to have a villain. You have to have somebody that you can look at. So I actually saw behind the scenes about that, where they say that they decided to make this into a hive, like a beehive. And a beehive has drones, workers, soldiers, and a queen. And everything is to protect that queen. So they decided, let's just go with this story. Which is very smart. And I like the fact that they thought about it. It's like, okay, we have to make this a cinematic experience. We have to make a movie out of it. People have to know what a villain looks like. Because, seeing a bunch of drones walk around that you shoot, if you don't know your villain, we complain about this nowadays, movies. The movie is made by the villain. The movie isn't made by your hero. The quality of the movie is set by the villain. So they had to create one, which is what I like which is what they did here, which is what I liked about it. And so it was a self-contained movie. Like, oh, this is somebody I recognize. Oh, we delved more into this species. We delved more into this villain. And you made a great movie in a year. So this came out in late 96. And this summer came out Twister, Independence Day, and The Rock. In a year that was filled with special effects and big sci-fi blockbuster movies. This comes out at the end of the year and says, well, here's the next Star Trek film after the last one. and here you go, which is why this is below, which is why this was a great movie, which is why this was such a success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this, I mean, definitely, I don't think anyone really expected this. No
No.
one really did. And while Generations was a financial success, critically, it was mixed. At best, it was mixed. I would say probably leaning towards panned a little bit more. But it was enough that we're like, okay, we'll do another film. This was the right way to do it. This absolutely, and this to me, one of the reasons I love it is actually it carries that tone of Wrath of Khan so well. What made Wrath of Khan work? And again, for clarification, love Wrath of Khan. I just don't think it's the best Star Trek movie out there. But that being said, I know, every time I do that. But realistically, the tones in here run the same. You can't tell me that in a flip, Captain Picard is not Khan. You can't tell me Picard's not Khan. He runs the same path and starts to begin to make the same mistakes. I'm going to get them. Now, what ended up being Khan's downfall, Picard had somebody to chime off of that eventually put him right. But the similarities are there. I was wronged and I want revenge. Picard's just in denial about it. But I love that. That's the human aspect of it. One of the things with Star Trek that some people find very difficult, especially the TNG, and the idea of a utopia, the idea that everybody's getting along and everything's going to be great. You know what? It's not perfect. And we're still human. Picard shows this in this. And I think that's one of its greatest strengths beyond the special effects and the action is the humanity that we get out of Picard. This is Picard's story 100%, and he plays it to perfection.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart is a marvelous actor. Where is his Oscar nomination for Logan? Tell me where it is.
I don't know.
Anyhow, that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah. Brennan, what did you like about it besides the special effects? You always love the special effects.
Well, going with the Wrath of Khan, it's very literary. You got the Moby Dick story going on here, which Star Trek often borrows from literature. We've seen it all throughout its history, particularly the original series with the Conscience of the King and other episodes like that. Well, there was some Shakespeare and Melville and just the list goes on and on. But even Victor Hugo could throw us from sometimes. The idea here that Picard now has to face his fears. Because like Kelly pointed out, we don't see the Borg that much in Next Generation. And after the Best of Both Worlds, Picard is not really threatened with basically looking his enemy in the eye. This time he has to. This time he can't run. He has to face
We're
it.
looking. Oh, there you go. You're back.
Did I glitch?
You froze on us. You were frozen. So I believe you were talking about Hugo and then you froze.
Well, Picard facing his enemy face to face.
Right.
This is that opportunity that he didn't have much in the series.
Right.
So that's really cool. The stuff with Data is great. And the stuff with seeing how humanity took the next step toward the Federation. Getting to actually see that acted out for us. Because we had heard about First Contact. We had heard about the formation of the Federation. We had heard about World War III, but we had never seen it portrayed, really. This is the opportunity to see that. And I think that that's just really neat. And the fact that we're talking James Cromwell, who had just been Oscar nominated the year before this film, as Farmer Hoggett in Babe. You have Oscar nominee Alfre Woodard as Lily, who is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Might I add, she gives such a performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these new additions to the cast. You have Alice Krige as the Borg Queen,
Mhm.
which, here's a funny little side note. In the movie Chariots of Fire, she played the girlfriend of Ben Cross.
Mhm.
Ben Cross played Sarek in the reboot films. Well, a nice little connection there.
Mhm.
And getting to see the moral dilemmas, getting to see Dixon Hill again
Oh.
is fantastic.
Mhm.
The music by Jerry Goldsmith. I mean, my word, the main theme is so emotionally moving. You have the Borg theme that's very like traditional, like Star Trek the original series.
Mhm.
Very dun dun dun.
Mhm.
Yeah, very heavy. You also have so the music's great, the movie looks great. Great characters and really just a great story about the morality of Picard and of other members of his crew. And getting to see Picard pushed to the brink,
Mhm.
where all of his ethics fade away because he has been so injured by the Borg. And I think this movie provides a sense of emotional closure for him, which he very much needed.
Mhm.
I could go on, but those are some of the reasons it really works for me as a film.
Mhm. You mentioned the literary aspects to it, and
Mhm.
of course, again, this is why I really compare it to Wrath of Khan. We come back again to Moby Dick, and it hits you smack in the face of this one.
Mhm.
There is no hiding it. They actually misquote Moby Dick when
Uh-oh.
Picard, yeah, he does misquote it, but you know what? It's okay because it's Patrick Stewart. He could misquote the Bible. I don't care.
Mhm.
It's Patrick Stewart. I will listen to what you have to say, sir. But there was another reference in here that I would like to take us down culture lane for a moment. I'd like to take us to the opera.
Ooh, yes.
There's a reference in here that I really loved, and I really wanted to dig deeper
Oh,
into this.
Berlioz.
It is
Berlioz.
Picard when in the opening of the film, when Picard has been given the orders to patrol the neutral zone. Picard's in his ready room, and I think really contemplating. He's listening to Berlioz,
Like turned
he
up to 11. Mhm.
very much so. And the sound, when you listen to it, what he's listening to is so very like this, and it's very creepy and very, it's very mood
Ominous.
enhancing, very ominous. When you listen to it, it is from the opera Les Troyens by
Yeah.
yes, Les Troyens by Berlioz. And it is specifically from Act 5, Vallon Sonore, which is the character singing is a lone sailor lost on a journey,
Mm.
which really fits to Picard's character here. This is a guy who feels alone on this journey right now because no one else had up to this point has ever been brought back from the Borg. No one. You are assimilated, you're done. You're either dead or you might as well be dead.
Until the Voyager crew in 709.
Right, when it's just happens every day. Voyager figured it out. We know how to bring people back. We got you. You get humanity. You get humanity.
Only to have
Everyone
them-
gets humanity.
Only to have them die horribly.
But up to this point, Picard is the only one to do this. So to have this reference with Berlioz and this character who is experiencing this very lonely journey, it's so subtle and beautiful. And I'm telling you right now, the average fan wouldn't have noticed that. I didn't notice that for years, and I finally looked it up. I was like, what is he listening to?
I just picked up on something.
Go ahead.
The Trojans, the Trojan War.
Mhm.
The Trojan horse. The Borg sneak aboard the Enterprise.
Ooh. Oh, there's a reference.
Yeah.
Subtle reference like
Mhm.
that. I love that.
As well as, the Wrath of Achilles and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movie about wrath and revenge.
Yeah.
It's all
Mhm.
there. It's all mixed in.
Mm-hmm. But what's interesting here, there's an interesting subtle reference too, that again, I absolutely love. Riker comes in during this moment to give him the first sweep of the neutral zone. And Picard pauses the music and Riker says, Bizet? No, Berlioz. Now, I thought to myself, why would the writers include that? That's kind of innocuous. Why would he do that? And I realized, because once again, his crew can't understand what he went through. His crew doesn't understand that. And by referencing, by like, oh, is this author or this composer? No, it's this composer. The crew doesn't understand. They follow his orders, but they don't understand.
But also,
they don't question it.
Bizet's greatest opera, Carmen, ends up
Mhm.
being about revenge in the end.
True.
Yet again, there it is.
There's another subtle reference in there too, but I just love the layers that they have laid out. And really, I didn't get that until much later in my life. I didn't know as a teenager who Bizet and Berlioz was. I thought Berlioz was a cat from the Aristocats.
Yeah. Yep.
That's all I
Yep.
knew. So I love these subtle references. Kelly, how do you feel? I mean, Star Trek does this a lot. They do. How do you feel about these very cultural things that I think the general audience, it goes over their head? But like, how do you feel about including those in there? And does it alienate the fans? Or do you think it adds the complexity that Star Trek actually needs?
Well, people confuse Star Trek, right? They see a science fiction show, they think it's supposed to be an action-filled show, and it's never been that. Even with the campiness of the original series, there's a reason why both Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner were Shakespearean actors, because they need the Shakespearean actors in order to do the roles. The original pilot episode of the original series, they did a pilot episode, the Christopher Pike storyline, and they went and the producer came back like, this is way too cerebral. We need a campier show. So they did. But if you look at the original series, it was campy, but there was also, they dealt with war, they dealt with, the constant time travel, they dealt with laws of genocide and
Racism.
like racism. I mean, you name it, they dealt with it, right? And they carry that on. Next Generation is called, I think, Star Trek's a smarter, bougier, younger brother, right? It's more cerebral, younger brother, and they carry that. They went and got another Shakespearean actor, Patrick Stewart, to do this, and he is very. I mean, they do experts of Shakespeare that reference classic, the whole Moby Dick reference. You mentioned that scene. I love that scene because everybody knows Ahab. Everybody knows Ahab's white whale. But when Picard, as you say, misquotes the actual book, she goes, what? Because people don't actually read the book. They know who Ahab and the white whale are, which is what she does. And then when he turns around and says, Moby Dick, and she, I never actually read the book. Because she wouldn't have. They just fought World War III. This is 10 years after World War III and the destruction of Earth, right? So that she probably wouldn't have. Which she is a representative of us, of the audience. If we're listening to this, we can understand. We know the references. We appreciate that the show did it. But I mean, I'm not gonna. I appreciate that you went to go research the opera that he was listening to. I did not do that. I have not done that since the movie has come out. Since the 30 years this movie has come out. But I can appreciate that they did that, right? Star Trek has always done that. They have always. My favorite episodes were always when Data was in the holodeck doing a scene of Macbeth, of King Lear, of whichever one he was
Henry
doing.
V.
And they were trying to make him understand Shakespeare, because as somebody who's understanding the human culture, the human condition, Shakespeare's a great way to look into it.
There was the episode,
Shakespeare.
The Defector. That was Henry V.
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. The performances in this are great, but it's the supporting cast. I agree with you. Jonathan Frakes, when Jonathan Frakes was hired before they had cast anyone
And the
else.
director. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the director, of course. he did a read through with this, and the group that he was doing the read through with it to, kind of go through it as a director does. The first thing he said with Lily was Alfre Woodard. First thing, and everyone agreed. Alfre Woodard was their choice from the beginning.
Alfre Woodard is a brilliantly explosive actress in the best way.
Mm-hmm. And she's really understated in this, and yet she's so important to it.
Mm-hmm.
She snaps Picard out of this when no one else can. No one else is able to do it because they're blinded by duty and love for Picard. They know what he went through, but they don't know what he went through. She has the advantage of not being in that circle and looking at him from the outside and going, Picard, blow up the damn ship.
Yeah, Jean-Luc didn't know he was Ahab until she pointed it out.
Mm-hmm. She can do something to that, and she's amazing. And then Jim Cromwell as Cochrane. Jim Cromwell, who at this point, this is the fourth time he has been in the Star Trek universe.
Yes, that's correct.
He is a Star Trek veteran at this point, but this by far is the role that I think he's remembered for the most. And he kills it. And what's really interesting is in Star Trek, Zefram Cochrane has been made out to be this saint, this almost god. Really, I mean, warp travel and first contact, all of this because of Zefram Cochrane, and they turn it on its head for us. They show that the man wasn't perfect. The man was just a man. And even Riker, I love it. Don't try to be a great man, just be a man. I love that. Who said that? That's a bunch of rhetorical nonsense. You did about 10
like
years.
You said it.
I love that. I enjoy that so much. So Jim Cromwell, by far, fabulous job in this. I love it. And then Alice Krieg. Alice Krieg, who comes out of nowhere for this role, South African actress, gives birth to easily one of Star Trek's most memorable villains. She's up there with Khan. She is up there with these greats, with Chang, with absolutely 100%. You can't tell me she's not. I absolutely love her performance, and she's a reason why we got more Borg Queen and Voyager. Maybe too much, but and we've had great performances since. The Borg Queen is introduced again in Picard, and I love it every time the Borg Queen comes in. This is now excellent.
Queen Jurati.
Queen Jurati. Oh, I can't wait till we get to her. Anyway, but I absolutely love Alice Krieg, and she's scary, she's creepy, and yet she's seductive. And
she's sexy and
good
creepy
at it. So good. And then you mentioned the special effects. The special effects alone of bringing her torso down with the dangling spine into that. I've seen how that's done. That is so complicated and so intricate. It took them weeks to get that shot done right.
And it looks perfect.
It does. It still looks good today. I love that. This design and this scary. And you know what's even better? We still, to this day, don't know what a Borg Queen is. There is still a mystery to it. And I love that. Is she biologic? Is she a creation? Are there multiple Borg Queens? We really don't have a complex idea of what she is, but this introduces her. This gave the Borg new teeth, and I love her performance in this. And by far, as Kelly said, you need a good villain. Alice Krieg gives that and more in every scene that she's in.
Also, Brent Spiner, of course, is fantastic in the film.
Brent Spiner is good. However, he gets kind of a little weird, whiny, sort of in the middle, just a little bit.
That's what happens when Brent Spiner is on his A game, apparently.
Yeah, I guess. But I do like him. I do. Data is fabulous in this, and it gives us more. It actually
it's a great Data episode. Basically,
it continues this arc with his emotion chip too. We get more of an understanding of what it can do to him, and he's in control of it now. But he has it turned back on, and he's experiencing more of these emotions, and I like that aspect of it very much so. When he's not doing it, he's a little weird again, a little wild.
Okay, that's fair.
But we move on. It's okay. Everyone's on their game. The only thing that just
this might be one of Patrick Stewart's best performances.
It really is. This is
in
the
any
dra-
of the work that he's done.
This is the dramatic Patrick Stewart that we want to see more of all the time. He's, you know what? It even it's right up there with his performance as Scrooge. Have you ever seen clips of his one-man Scrooge show?
No, I
Fabulous.
haven't.
Fabulous. He does sometimes at Christmas a one-man Scrooge show. This is amazing.
Yep.
Right.
So he did a movie for TNT. He did a Christmas Carol. He did an actual.
That's
Yep.
why he did it. That
Yep.
they expanded it out, but yeah, he does a one-man series.
Yep.
And every so often, every few years, he'll go back on stage and do it, and it's fabulous. I've never seen the whole thing, only clips, and it's just
Have you guys seen him read A Christmas Carol on TikTok? He just sits there in front of a fireplace reading it. It is
nice.
hysterical.
Oh, no, I haven't.
It is the best.
Cool. That was awesome.
Fascinating.
But was there anything in here that we didn't like?
Oh boy.
And we have to ask.
Okay. So since you always start with me, I actually did make a list last night. So I did say in the beginning, if you've no clue what the Star Trek universe is, you're not going to know who the Borg is, and you're not going to understand the importance of Picard and Locutus, and you're not going to really understand that. And you're going to watch and say, well, how come they're just walking right by them? Why are they attacking? So because it's been established before that they only attack when they feel threatened, which I think he mentions this very briefly in the movie. And Star Trek does what they always do, right? They set up something and then they kind of break their own world and then they kind of set it up again. And a lot of things kind of don't make sense. My favorite was, you mentioned this earlier, Data has just jumped 5 stories down to disarm Alfred Woodard's character, right? And she faints in front of him. Like she shoots him, she faints, and then the next thing is Beverly Crusher comes and I have to take her back to the Enterprise in order to heal her. She looks at Picard and says, "Don't talk to me about the Prime Directive." I was like, well, I think that's already shot because she just saw this man jump down 5 stories before she fainted. I think we're done with the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
If you're worried about Prime Directive, none of you should even be here right now. And you certainly shouldn't have jumped down 5 stories.
In reality, it's not even the Prime Directive that's the matter here. It's the temporal Prime Directive, which hasn't been invented yet.
Exactly. So, but like if you are a Star Trek fan, you have learned to forgive these because if you've watched every single episode and you've seen every single movie, they have these little breaks and these little discrepancies all the time. It's actually kind of it's part of their charm. It's part of the universe.
Yeah. There is one thing, and my good friend Kiwi Jess has
remembered. Kiwi.
He's a good friend of Brennan and mine, Kiwi Jess.
We love Kiwi.
She lives in New Zealand. She's a wonderful, wonderful young lady. Big Star Wars fan. Big Star Wars.
Yes, she is.
Here's the thing. There's a point where Picard opens up a bay door so Alfred Woodard's character, Lily, can look down and see there's a planet down there, and he's discussing everything. We see Australia, Papua New Guinea, that's great. But you know what's missing from this clearly?
Uh-oh.
The entire country of New Zealand. Gone. Missing. Wiped off the face of the earth. And yet, now I thought in my
And we know it exists because of the first episode of Voyager.
Yes, we know because
and also that Bashir's parents are sent.
Yes, they're all supposed to be in New Zealand. So I was like, whoopsie, like, how do you miss New Zealand? So as a Trek fan, on behalf of Trek fans towards Kiwi Jess and all of the New Zealand population, including Peter Jackson, we apologize.
Yes.
What
a workshop, we're very sorry.
Yes. Actually, one of the other things too that I did notice was the reuse of sets. I mentioned this in the past. It doesn't bug me. I don't hate it, and I don't love it. I don't hate it, and I don't love it.
The sick bay set.
Sick bay is, and I do know this for a fact, sick bay is exactly the Voyager set. They did that on purpose. There was no reason not to. There was like, it'll work. I do know that the warp core, the whole warp core room is a redress from the Voyager set. It's a complete redress. Not original, but they did change it to make it a Sovereign class one. but it's a complete redress set. And you can kind of tell with the corridors, again, they reuse those sets. It's not an uncommon thing, and it's not something totally horrible. Sometimes, though, I'd like to see some originality in these ships on the interiors.
Yeah.
The bridge is okay, but I always just want a little bit more to really show that these ships are different and unique and grow.
I mean, at one point they were wearing each other's uniforms. So this is a common theme. In when they were changing uniforms, or I think some of the records were in the wrong one, so the sleeves only came up to here because they were all wearing, because they're all the wrong size, because they hadn't refit them for each cast member yet.
Yeah, there were a few cuts made, yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is. Some of the humor was a little awkward. Deanna getting drunk.
Oh,
I feel bad for this goes always to, why did Marina Sirtis get the shaft so often? It's not her fault.
Seriously.
She's such a good character. Why do we do this to her? And then, does she have any other part to play other than to be kind of a little toy for Zephram Cochrane briefly? And then she's the communications officer.
she sucks as a counselor. I hate to say it, but she does.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't fly for me for her. Like, there's not enough here for her that there should be. And I hate that. This would be a good spot for Troy. The people down there just went through a tragedy, serious tragedy. Zephram Cochrane is freaked out. Are you telling me that Deanna Troi, the half Betazoid counselor who is empathic, wouldn't have used those abilities to go, hey guys, we got to handle this, you know?
Mhm.
She's misused in this, and it's not, again, her fault. It's the writers. They focused much more on Picard, and I understand why you do that. But I think you need to be fair to all your characters. You gave Reg Barkley something cool to do. And Reg Barkley shouldn't even be there. What are you doing?
Good point.
It's odd for me. One of the things I did like, Geordi's eyes. This is the introduction of Geordi's eyes. I love that we ditched the visor. LeVar Burton requested for years to ditch the visor. Did not like the visor. In fact, it was very uncomfortable for him makeup wise. Very uncomfortable to have that thing on him. So the fact that they gave him contacts with a little bit of computer CGI work, I'm very happy with that. I'm happy we got to see his eyes, as it were. And that was a nice touch. I did like that.
Indeed.
Anything else in this film that we absolutely don't like?
Well, nothing that I absolutely don't like, just it's funny that Riker's telling Cochrane basically everything that's going on.
So much for the Prime Directive.
I mean, there isn't a
They're in the cockpit.
Star Trek is really weird about the idea of messing up history, because apparently they never mess up history, even though they mess up history. But it's a minor complaint, and it's not this film. It's just the Star Trek in general. It's kind of loosey-goosey with the rules.
But it does also play into things that will come down the line by doing this. At least they don't leave it alone. It's not like this movie has no consequences. There are consequences to this movie. And so I bring us to the connections to the greater Star Trek universe. I think the greatest connection of all, besides, again, Borg Queen, those are big things. But there's a very timey-wimey aspect of this that, Brennan, you unintentionally brought up earlier. So if we think of the Borg introduction as an arc, when do we consider the first appearance of the Borg, as it were? Some would say, technically, First Contact is the first appearance of the Borg, because they destroy the Borg, and some of the Borg crash land in the Arctic, the debris and what have you. Well, in Enterprise, we have regeneration where we meet those Borg that were frozen down there during the Enterprise era. That causes a kind of a chain reaction to where the Borg are reintroduced without calling them the Borg. It was a good decision. But the last thing they do is send a message out towards the Delta Quadrant. That's going to take a very long time to get out there. And they timed it out right, because if you time it out right, the first episode that would follow that timeline is Q-Who.
It's Q-Who.
It's Q-Who. So in a way, they circled the time back around, and I really like that. They don't ignore the effects of time travel here. There were consequences, and we get to see it.
Yeah.
That was fabulous to
I mean,
me.
the grandfather paradox, yeah.
Absolutely. There's some also a sad corner. This film was released. See, I want to double check my exact date. Hold on. There it is. This film was released November 22nd, 1996. That is also a sad day in Star Trek history, as that is the day that Star Trek actor Mark Lenard passed away. Sarek passed away the day this was released. And how fitting on First Contact, the Vulcans and what have you. Not a connection per se, but something I noticed. I was like, wow, that's weird. That was really weird, actually.
Do you know that in a strange coincidence, their film critic Roger Ebert passed away 50 years to the day before First Contact?
Interesting. That is very interesting. That's actually pretty fascinating. Let's see here.
And he loved this film, by the way.
This also continues the tradition of having an unofficial crossover. The shows a lot of times do crossovers, believe it or not. For example, TNG in A Counter Farpoint, we had an appearance from DeForest Kelly as Admiral Bones. But the shows do this too. DS9, obviously, we had Picard. And later, we actually had a full crossover with Bashir, and we reviewed that episode, Brennan. But Voyager did it too. Voyager had Deep Space Nine and Quark, and of course, we had encounters with Q and even Riker, Barclay, all of that.
The other Riker.
There's the other Riker. But the movies are not immune to this, because we get two fun cameos in this that I absolutely enjoy. Robert Picardo as un-EMH. Not the EMH, but un-EMH, which was a lot of fun.
Not a doorstop.
I'm a doctor, not a doorstop. And then Ethan Phillips comes in and requested that he be uncredited. He is uncredited as the Mater D in the Dixon Hill line. But if you go to IMDb, it's still there today. It marks him as human Neelix.
Helix.
Yes. I love that, but I love the little crossover pieces here. It's a nice touch. Even having the EMH, like, I kind of get why it's there. I love that. And it ties to the fact that Crusher doesn't like the technology. And we know from Voyager that the technology was flawed initially and had bad bedside manner, and it wasn't liked at all. So this fits in that when you look at his personality in here, it's very in line with that first season and that idea that that full line was messed up. They weren't perfect. And
so they do this a lot. So in the shows, they do this a lot. They do the crossover a lot. They do it a lot in the movie. So you guys mentioned in the Star Trek 6 your episode that Worf appears as one of his ancestors to defend Kirk and Bones' character in the hearing, because that was like the handoff to the next generation. So the idea originally, when this movie was out, was eventually they were going to hand off to one of the next series. They were either going to, I think, because DS9, because of the way the show is, you can't really do a movie of DS9, so they were going to hand off, I think, to Voyager. Was going to be the next cast that they hand off to. Nemesis did so poorly that they decided and there were contractual and management issues at Paramount, so they were just like, no, we're just gonna and years later decided we're just going to reboot instead.
They were also going to destroy the Defiant in this episode. But Braga, Brandon Braga, who worked on this, but was also show running for DS9, I think, ended up going.
And he co-wrote the screenplay.
Yeah, he went, no. And so they added the line in adrift, but salvageable to save the Defiant.
I thought they did destroy Defiant because in DS9 they had the Defiant too.
That wasn't until between
that
season
got
6 and 7.
destroyed later.
Because it was destroyed. Okay.
Yeah, and
At
the US it was
Second
destroyed
Battle
by
of Chintoka, I think.
destroyed by the Breen, if I remember correctly, it was the Breen, and then the USS Sao Paulo was redesignated as the Defiant.
Got it.
Yes, and
But yeah, they were going to originally destroy the
but did
Defiant.
Adam Scott survive?
I don't know.
I certainly hope he did.
I'd like to imagine the world where Adam Scott was assimilated and we just got Adam Scott like doing Borg stuff, but it's Adam Scott.
Yeah.
Does he get Severance? So does that link to Severance?
Severance would have been a lot different.
Makes Community far more interesting.
Yes. We love you, Adam Scott. Please join us.
Yes, Adam Scott, you are welcome onto our show anytime you would like if you want to talk about your time on First Contact. Oh, I love that. Let's see here. This is the last appearance of in the movies, and actually for quite some time, except for a few flashbacks, of the Next Generation uniform and comm badge. It's the last time we would see that in Picard's flashback. We would never get to see it again except for a very occasional flashback, which I love. There's some continuity here that I absolutely love, and little attentions to detail. The time frame that Data states when he talks about being fully functional is accurate to his time with Tasha in
the naked time.
It is.
Oh wait, the naked now.
To the minute.
Now.
It is to the minute.
The naked now.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes, that scene if you watch that original, that is a very funny scene afterwards when he comes back on the bridge.
This is our first full, I would say, modern view of the size of the Federation. Over 150 planets and 8,000 light years. So we kind of get a span of how that works. And I really, really like that. Let's see. Of course, Moby Dick and Wrath of Khan. We mentioned that. Now, this is
by the way, there's a connection. 2 years after this movie, Patrick Stewart played Captain Ahab in a made-for-TV adaptation of Moby Dick starring Henry Thomas.
Also featuring Gregory Peck.
In his last role. Gregory Peck's last role.
I remember that.
I watched this. It was on
Gregory
USA.
Peck,
yes.
Gregory Peck, the grandfather of Ethan Peck, aka Spock from Discovery.
There's another
and Strange Worlds.
Another really fun connection that I had to learn this. Zephram Cochrane, when he first meets him, when they're looking at the lights, and he says, "That is the constellation Leo." In the constellation of Leo is the star Wolf 359. And Star Trek fans know Wolf 359 is a major battle in Star Trek history. The Borg decimated Wolf 359,
including
Sisko's wife.
Sisko's ship.
Yes, and the Saratoga died right there. I mean, like, it just significant. It's interesting. He chose the Leo constellation. I thought that was really, really interesting. And for the first time ever, contiguously, the word Star Trek was used in Star Trek.
Yeah.
We've heard Trek to the stars, but never Star Trek. So this is the first time. You guys are on some kind of a Star Trek. I see what you did there. It's the first time that's ever done. I absolutely love that. Fabulous. And here's another funny little thing. When Riker calls the Defiant a tough little ship in the 3rd season of DS9, Thomas Riker also calls it a tough little ship. Another, great minds think alike, I suppose. Yeah, there's so much to this, and they did such a great job of connecting this for the
Oh,
fans. Kelly, you
and
said it right. This is for the fans.
and
And
a
it's
bunch of new starships.
yes, the Akira, the
Mhm.
Steam Runner, the Centaur.
No center.
I thought there was a Centaur class in there.
There's a Norway class.
The Norway class? Okay. The Centaur is the one that is just a pretty basic one. It's the dish, and then the pylons kind of go out in the side. Isn't it the Centaur class?
There was not a centaur class at the battle, though.
I thought there was. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But here's another fun one, another little one. They hid it in there. It doesn't play out anymore. The Millennium Falcon is hidden. If you look, I'm not joking, a little tiny Millennium Falcon was hidden at the Battle of Sector 001.
It's all connected.
It is. You've been
Well,
trying to
it's 'cause-
prove this for years, haven't you, Brennan?
Yeah.
That's because they got IOM to do it, and I think some little designer was like, "Let's just do this."
And it's
Since they
so
have the
tiny. It
template.
is. It's so tiny, little tiny thing. But I love that. I adore that very much. So
And an
Uh,
R2D2.
yes, yes. I love it so much. This is such a great movie.
Sorry, Kelly, you are in the realm of nerds.
Oh, trust me, I live in the realm of nerds. It's
Oh,
fine.
Mhm.
yes. Yes. And of course, this is the earliest technical appearance of Zephram Cochrane. Of course, he was in TOS. But this is the earliest in his personal timeline that we see Zephram Cochrane. And he would
He
go on to
was
do
in
a lot.
TOS.
That's
He
right,
was.
in Metamorphosis.
He was.
Yes.
In Metamorphosis.
So this is a big deal in terms of kind of legacy characters too.
He retires to Alpha Centauri after this.
And then is met by what is the cloud's name? There's a name for it. I know there
I forget
is.
the name of it, yeah.
I don't know. We're gonna look at that one of
The
these days.
companion.
Companion. Yes. Anyway, so that comes back around interesting too. And Cochrane is a great character to look at. I love Cochrane. Is fascinating. And just again, Cromwell in this is just a treat.
Yes.
Such a treat. And I love that carried into Enterprise.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. In the first episode of Enterprise.
It does, but also those character traits continue, and the stories that we get from Zephram Cochrane through Captain Archer are just so good. So good.
The tall tales of Zephram Cochrane.
Yes. What are your okay, favorite moment or favorite quote?
I have a favorite quote. I actually wrote this down because when I heard it, I was like, "That's right." So I forgot that Data actually had his emotion chip in Generation, and not this movie, because I remember the scene where he turned it off. So I just for some reason I remember that he installed in this movie. He didn't. He installed it in Generations, and I remember giving Brent Spiner a bunch of weird one-liners because his emotion chip he couldn't adapt yet, but this one he could. So my favorite line was, of course, "To hell with the orders," right? But not delivered as somebody who was mad or had the emotion behind "to hell with the orders." He delivered it as a non-emotional Data. I believe I speak for everyone. To hell with the orders. I mean, you don't deliver that line like that, but he does because he's Data. And
this was Brent Spiner's request. Actually, he requested something like this in honor of Spock's line.
Yep. If I were human, my response would be go to hell.
He wanted something similar. So to hell with our orders. You know, and he gets these one-liners in a few of these movies because, like, then and we'll talk about it next time. Insurrection. I love saddle up, lock and load. Like, I love it. Data, you got it. Data got some lines. Data's good. And then the first one, S word. That's got to be great for Data too. Like, giving Data these lines is fabulous.
So I do love Data. I love Brent Spiner. They have rebooted or they've sequeled Night Court. And Brent Spiner's early role was on Night Court, and I really wish they bring him back to do.
I hope he comes back once, just once. Bob and June Wheeler.
I hope they made it. I hope they live in a penthouse in Manhattan right now, and they have made it, and they are the most successful couple ever. That is what I want.
Listen, that's all I want from this series. I don't care about anything else. I want Bob and June Wheeler to come back.
Yes. their daughter is like going to be the next president, and they are wealthy beyond belief. That is what I want.
He's a senator now or something. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
That is what I want. Yeah.
It's
So that's
so
my favorite
crazy.
line. To hell,
Oh,
to
boy.
hell with the order.
Yeah. Brennan?
Well, it's probably the most famous line. The line must be drawn, yeah. I can't say it with as much force.
Hold on. See, now, Brennan, you and I think alike because that too is my favorite. I will not sacrifice the Enterprise. We've made too many compromises already, too many retreats. They invade our space and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds and we fall back. Not again. This line must be drawn here. This far, no farther. And I will make them pay
pay.
for what they have done.
Mhm.
Love that. It's, and it's fabulous. That is the breaking point for him. That is the, I think if you've ever done counseling, like seriously, that is the breakthrough. It really is. When we finally see the chink in Picard's armor, getting him to admit that
Yes.
and breaking of the
honest
glass.
with the truth.
Yes. You
Being
broke your little
honest
ships.
what's in him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, also, I liked it at the end. He says, "Make it so," instead of engaged, because Zephyr Cochrane.
And here's
Good.
a fun little thing with this, and maybe I read too much into it, but when he breaks those ships and you see them destroyed,
Mhm.
from a very poetic standpoint, isn't it interesting that that's what he did as Locutus? In a very symbolic way, his anger just did it again. He's got so much pressure on him to not let what happened at Wolf 359 ever happen again.
Well,
and he does it again symbolically. I love it.
You know what the saucer came off of? The Enterprise-C saucer fell.
Really?
And the Enterprise-D drive section fell.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting little. It's Enterprise-C, yesterday's Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
One of the great episodes of Next Gen. Anyhow, yep.
And then Data, I think I'm going to throw one bonus one in.
Oh, yeah.
Data throwing in resistance is futile. Yes, Data.
Yep. And my
Because
favorite.
he breaks the glass in almost exact same manner that Picard had done it.
Yes,
He does
you
it
got
with
it.
his hand and he breaks the glass.
Yep.
I'd say the favorite scene for me is anything with Alfred Woodard. I think particularly the end scene when Picard says goodbye to Lily.
Yes.
Got me. I was crying yesterday watching that scene.
Mm-hmm.
But also the scene of Zephyr Cochrane meeting the Vulcan. Tried to do the Vulcan salute. And then just shaking his hand. It's just a beautiful scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Let's see.
By the way, the name of the ship is the Toplanahath, I believe, which is mentioned in Star Trek 4.
Okay. I found a list. I found the list of the ships that participated in the Battle of Sector 001.
Mhm.
We have the USS Appalachia, which is a steam runner, the USS Bozeman. Boy, we've seen a lot of those. The Soyuz. There's the Soyuz. And remember, Bozeman, if any of you remember, Bozeman was we last saw in TNG under Captain under Fraser.
Bateman, Captain Morgan
Bateman. Captain Fraser. Wouldn't Captain Fraser be interesting?
Morgan Bateson.
Fraser.
Morgan Bateson.
Yes. The USS Budapest, which is a Norway class, the Defiant. The Endeavor, which is a Nebula class ship. The Enterprise, of course. The Lexington, which is another Nebula. The USS Madison, although we're not sure what that is. The Thunderchild, which is an Akira class. The USS Jaeger, which is a Saber class, among 3 unidentified Oberth, 2 unidentified Miranda class, 4 unidentified Sabers, 2 unidentified Akiras, 2 unidentified Norways, 5 steam runners, an unidentified Nebula, and some other ship, which may or may not have been the Millennium Falcon.
Oh, there was definitely one Millennium Falcon in there. Absolutely.
It's there.
You know, some ILF guy just threw it in.
Yeah.
Chewie, we're home.
Oh, that's great. Final thoughts on this film.
This is an extraordinary Star Trek film. on so many levels. This is next gen at its finest, I think, or at least in the tradition of its finest. I think that Patrick Stewart, Alfred Woodard, everybody is operating on like a high level, particularly those two actors. It really is the best of the next gen films. And in my opinion, maybe the third best Star Trek film. And definitely one of the most cinematic of the Star Trek films. In terms of just elevating everything another level. Taking it from TV quality to cinema quality. And yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. Kelly.
So this film was better than it had any right to be, especially after its predecessor, especially given the I mean, the series was great, but the series was not heavy on special effects, right? You can't be, especially back in the 80s and 90s. This film was also Jonathan Frakes' I think feature film directorial debut. He is often maligned because everybody remembers Insurrection, and he's often maligned as, oh, he was just the bad Star Trek director, and he's not. This film, as a debut, and to both act and direct this film, and to make it what it was quite an accomplishment. They got it right with this film. I forgot how funny this film was. I was watching, I was like, I forgot the humor that was in this film, because this is generally built as the action Star Trek film. And I just I was like, there's actually a lot of drama, there's a lot of humor in here. It's acted well, they got a great cast. I love Alfre Woodard. She's in all the best scenes that we've all talked about. And it just kind of hits, and it was almost a surprise hit at the time. And it is, I can say it's in my top 3 only because if I put it in my top 3, I'm gonna have to kick out Khan. So that means
top 5.
I will
Let's
say
say top
it's in my top 5. It is the best Next Generation film, but I will say it's in my top 5.
It is magical to me. This came out perfect. I mean, this, as a kid, I loved Star Trek, but my favorite were probably like the spaceship battles. And to open essentially with a really good spaceship battle was a great start. And then to keep you going with the action was just fabulous. And yet the complexity of the interactions and the writing is so good. I love it. I love it. This easily for me, this is number 2. It's always 6, this, and then Khan to me. But it easily is top tier echelon. I don't think there's any question about that. And this is kind of that bar that I think a lot of films going into the JG verse, they were trying to reach. I really do. I think this hit something that worked, because you could go see this, even if you weren't a Star Trek fan, you might have had a few questions, but you just went with it, and you didn't need a lot else. We knew the Borg were bad. They were dangerous. We got just enough of Picard's background and what happened in the explanation that, okay, I didn't have to watch the rest of it. And it was a good time. You saw the tournament that he went with, and that goes to Picard. This film, as a matter of fact, was worthy of all the accolades that it got. Best makeup Academy Award nomination, all that Borg makeup. Absolutely. It was nominated for best dramatic presentation from the Hugo Awards. And then the Saturn Awards, it actually won. Brett Spiner, Alice Krieg, and costumes by Deborah Everton won Saturn Awards from them. But Frakes, as writer and director, was nominated. Stewart was nominated. Makeup, special effects. John Knoll did the special effects. And by the way, John Knoll did come out and admit, because he's also done Star Wars special effects, he was the guilty party who put the Millennium Falcon in there. So it is canon. Therefore, all you fans who said Star Trek and Star Wars can't be together, you're wrong.
And by the way,
it's the same special effects company.
By the way, the best Star Wars series would not exist without John Knoll, because he's the guy who created the idea for Rogue One. which later became Andor. So
Yes. So this is absolutely fabulous. This was the first Star Trek DVD I had. And when I got for Christmas one year a 10-volume set, special edition DVDs. That's the first one I popped in. Without question. That's what you do. I absolutely love this. Kelly, I want to thank you so much for joining us for First Contact. This is one of our favorites and clearly one of yours. And I'm so glad you are here. I'm still not bitter at all for you stealing some of my favorite cast members for my crew, but that's okay. We still had you back.
Hey, that was a good episode.
It was a great episode. That was fun. So much
That was
fun.
a lot of fun.
But Kelly, do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, so social media, best way to find me is at KellyKill55 on Twitter. I used to be, until it was canceled, writer for the latest season of the Movie Trivia Schmodown. I assume some of your fans know what that is. And if your fans do know what that is, they will also know when the players, who is Ben Bateman, I run his Patreon, and which is currently going through some construction right now. But come check out his Patreon. Right now, we do some hangs. He's got some content on there. He's going through a little bit of construction because he's kind of reorganizing it just a little bit. So we'll have more content out sometime in the near future. But if you want to find me, Twitter and his Patreon are probably the best ways to find me.
That is awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. Well, Brennan, time goes on and waits for no man, right?
If you say so.
Next week, we don't get to leave Captain Picard. Nay. The randomizer next week has given us season 2 of Picard, The Watcher. So we're going to go into season 2, but the following week, we have a very special episode and a very special guest joining us. He joined us for our look at Star Trek The Motion Picture. And he's going to join us again for a very special episode because in 2 weeks, we are looking at possibly, in my opinion, personal opinion, the best episode of the original series.
And one of the best episodes of Star Trek.
One of the best episodes in science fiction history.
Yes.
Balance of Terror in 2 weeks. And Steve Morris himself, again, from the Enterprise Incident podcast.
And co-host of the Cinephiles.
Yes, co-host of the Cinephiles. Is going to join us and talk about this. And this may not be our only visit to the world of Balance of Terror, but I'll leave it at that. Brennan.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Brennan, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brennan Mystical. You can find us on YouTube at Page Turners They Were Not. And everywhere you can find podcasts at Page Turners They Were Not, you will find Random Trek. You can also follow me on my various social groups. Particularly, I want to shout out the Nerd Herder podcast, Pink Milk, and several others that definitely I'd say come and check out. And you can also find me on Facebook at Brendan Marr and on Instagram at Brendan Blue.
And you can find me at C Ingle 1984, both on Twitch and Twitter, where actually I am getting back into gaming on my Twitch. I soon will be doing a playthrough of all of the mainline Halo games and streaming that. However, as a teacher, I don't know how long that's going to take, but we're going to have some fun with it. There's another series you can't tell me wasn't influenced by Star Trek. There's some Halo stuff there. We talk about the Flood and the Borg. Come on. But with that, we end every episode. Kapla! And live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.